this is happening everywhere. If there's a freeway by your house, it's happening. If there's people by your house, it's happening. It doesn't matter how rural or how nice you think your community is. I promise you, it's happening.
It's happening right here to U.S. citizen children by U.S. citizen offenders. It's happening in wealthy neighborhoods, middle-class neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods. It's happening everywhere.
People in the U.S. do not believe it's an issue.
The objectification and the depersonification and the commodification of human life is all around us.
Sex trafficking can happen anywhere. I mean, it can happen in a church. It can happen in the back of a van. It can happen in a basement. There's no place that sex trafficking can't happen.
So starting very young, I was sexually abused by a family member. And a couple years later, when I went to school, it happened again with someone in my school abusing me all throughout my kindergarten year. So I had this understanding very early on, or this belief that there was something wrong with me. Because two different people, woman and a guy, didn't know each other, both using me for the same reason, and I'm the only common denominator here. Clearly, something's wrong with me. And in a classic case, the abusers made sure that I wouldn't say anything, kept me silenced, and so for years, I was essentially living this double life of covering up for my abusers and, on the outside, seemingly like this normal little kid, little girl going to church, having this little childhood in the country, but being 6 years old and in my head planning out whatever sex act I could perform next to make them happy. It was just programmed in me from the time I was young.
And people also envision like someone, the media, chained to a radiator. That's not the case. Since 2004, we haven't got one referral that said kid found chained to a radiator. But they are locked down, but mentally. Recruitment is like, when you lock someone down mentally, you think of a cult leader. You make them believe what you believe. You make your followers see the world the way you see it.
At one point, I tried to tell a doctor about the panic attacks that I was having and how I thought they might have been related to this abuse that I had experienced as a child. It was the second time I tried to tell somebody. And he told me that I shouldn't talk about it, and he prescribed antidepressants, and he sent me on my way. And so by the time I got to college, I had lived 18 years of a double life, of looking like the perfect girl, especially growing up in a church environment, the perfect Christian girl that did all of the right things and said all of the right things and hung out with all the right people, and covering up for the abuse of these other individuals, completely covering up my shame, everything that I was struggling with on the inside. At one point I was working 3 jobs, doing an internship, going to school full-time, just trying to make ends meet. And one of those jobs I was bartending. And there was this regular that always came in, and he was a regular before my time, so I didn't think anything of it. But he was about 30 years older than me. But this guy kept on staying later and later. And then he figured out my schedule. So then he would only come in on the nights when I was scheduled. And the conversations became more intimate, a bit more intense. He felt like someone that I could really open up to about the things that I had experienced. And he told me about how he could really empathize with what I had gone through. And through those conversations, over a couple of years, he came to know nearly everything about me. I was taught stranger danger as a kid. I was never taught, you know, this is what grooming is and this is what love bombing is and all of these terms that I was finding out. It gave him the perfect opportunity to also know all of my weaknesses, all of my vulnerabilities. And he saw what I consistently tried to cover up, which was that I had absolutely no self-esteem, no self-worth whatsoever. And he made it seem like he was falling in love with me, like I was this angel on earth, all of these wonderful things that I always wanted someone to believe about me. And eventually, that came at a cost. Eventually, that relationship turned into what we would call now, on paper, personal sexual servitude, where I essentially became this personal sex slave, on call nearly 24/7, in very grotesque and abusive sex acts that I did not know for a while ended up on camera. And when I saw the images for the first time, I was shocked. First of all, I was shocked because they didn't seem to look like me. But throughout this time period, I was going deeper and deeper into my alcoholism and combining it with pills and just anything that I could get my hands on to not be sober for these experiences. And so the first time I saw these images, it didn't even look like me because it looked totally trashed. And black and blue marks and the dark circles under the eyes and could barely keep my eyes open kind of situation. And I, for some reason, it didn't cross my mind that I should make sure these images don't go anywhere. I didn't realize or know, and still to this day, I don't know the extent of where they ended up. But for several years, this guy completely controlled my life. And again, I was living that double life, but I had already developed the skill of being really good at that. I was going to school, I was getting my degree, I would go to class, I would go to work, I would then go to him. I wasn't even staying in my dorm room anymore, and eventually he moved me to an apartment off campus and paid for it so he'd have better access to me. But I remember waking up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, pulling up the makeup, covering up the bruises, covering up the hickeys, covering up the teeth marks, putting on my, work outfits, driving into Boston for my internship, coming back, going to class, and it was just this rinse and repeat. And making sure that I wasn't sober as often as possible. He had constructed this completely alternate reality that made me believe that a normal life, the way that everyone else sort of lived, squares lived, was basic and not for us. And we were brilliant, and we were so far, we were so much more developed than everybody else in thinking. And he would take me out places and we would get looks, but he would always blow it off as just, well, they're not, they're too small-minded to think about, a couple like us having an age gap like us it can be possible. Unbeknownst to me, I have a sugar daddy and I'm making porn without knowing it. I'm in a room today with 2 cameras on me, and someday this video is going to be watched by someone. And I am well aware that at the same time, someone else is going to be watching another video of me that was made years ago that I didn't have a choice in making. And that will continue for the rest of my life. I often get the question, you're so smart, how did this happen to you?
Every victim and survivor I've ever worked with is smart. They are smart, but that doesn't mean they cannot be groomed and exploited, because we are human beings. And what people do not give enough grace to is that at the core of each and every person in the whole wide world, we want to be loved. We want to feel acceptance. We want to feel wanted. We want to feel a part of something. And that is what traffickers focus on. It's not about how smart kids are, or it's not about how smart adults are.
It has nothing to do with being smart and everything to do with what are you vulnerable to.
We can make a list of risk factors of all the things that make you at higher risk, but just being human is vulnerable. Our existence on this earth is vulnerability. We're imperfect. We all have things that we need that we don't have. We all have things that we want. We are all built with desire for connection and for love.
The typical age to engage in exploitation, prostitution, is between the ages of 12 and 14. That's the average age of entry here in the United States.
And what I learned is, in this, just like in my story, it's really a symptom of all of these massive systemic issues of poverty, of gender-based violence, of systemic racism, of addiction and housing insecurity.
Our number one need as humans is to be loved and to belong. And my dad worked a lot to provide for the family. He had his own business and he wasn't really around. So essentially raised myself. But I did have loving grandparents, my father's parents. I was raised in a big Italian Catholic home, and we had Sunday dinner and macaroni and meatballs, and we went to church, and I slept over, and my Nani and Papa would read me bedtime stories, and very kind and loving. And I know that placed a seed of love and self-worth in there, but it wasn't enough to give me an extensive amount of self-confidence. And just kind of went on my journey. And, middle school age, 12, 13, 14, started hanging out with people doing things I shouldn't have been doing. I did experience sexual violence as a teen, but I didn't have anyone help me process that. So you stuff it and you just move on, and unfortunately spelled love, S-E-X. I met my trafficker at a local nightclub when I was 19, and he knew friends, so he wasn't a complete stranger. So I had just graduated high school, was going to community college for journalism. I wanted to be a writer. And he brought me to the bar and spent $7, right, and bought me a drink, and I was impressed because he was handsome and he had a lot of money and clothes and jewelry, and it was nothing like I've ever experienced. And when we got together a few days later, he showed up in the champagne-colored Mercedes-Benz, and it was like, note to self, he's probably a drug dealer. And again, meeting my trafficker, knowing, okay, he's probably a drug dealer, not really caring, I had no idea he would become a trafficker. I didn't even know what that word was. If anything, okay, I heard the word pimp, but I never would have thought I would get involved until this slow process of grooming and manipulation started, right? That's the first step generally. So for me, he just played that boyfriend role, right? What was my number one vulnerability? I was looking for love and attention. So he played that. He met my family, came over for Christmas, Thanksgiving, took me out shopping, would buy me things, tell me how much he loved me, how pretty I was. But then he would plant small seeds of doubt, like, why would you want to go to school for journalism? That's stupid. Why would you want to work at a hair salon? You can own one. I happened to get invited to a college party at a local university by friends, all these boys. They're all drunk and they're partying, and they tell me that the girl coming to be the entertainment is gonna strip and we're gonna have a good time. Okay, totally normalized, fine. And she goes to walk in to entertain us, and it's my best friend. So we try, ruin the party, she doesn't dance. Everyone's drunk and upset, and they kick us out. And I go back home to my boyfriend, and I told him what happened, and he happens to know her trafficker. And he takes me to her house a few days later. We show up, she lives in Chestnut Hill, which is an expensive, affluent area of Boston. No one would ever think that a trafficker lives there. The neighbors have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. No one's asking questions. There's a Range Rover and a BMW in the driveway, and I come in, she has her own room, he has his, and the few other women that lived there shared because there was so many. And she wasn't handcuffed to a radiator, she wasn't drugged, she wasn't beat, she looked like she had arrived. And so all of a sudden I started to think, maybe I'm missing out. Maybe this isn't that bad. And she's telling me how she goes to these parties and dances, and she goes to a massage parlor, and all the money that she makes, she gives to her man, and he gets her anything that she wants. So now I go back to my boyfriend and I say, okay, I'll try, but if I don't want to do it anymore, can I stop? And of course he promises me, sure, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. So my trafficker sent me to Connecticut to work in this massage parlor, and I get sent with a duffel bag full of baby wipes, condoms, high heel stilettos, skimpy dress. It was kind of like the streets, but indoors. And I get buzzed up by the big bouncer at the door. I come up, the woman knows I'm coming, my name gets changed, and I get a tour of the place. It's a lounge area, very dark, musty, no windows. The little couches you sat on was sticky. Everything was kind of grimy feeling. Up on this top floor in a business, in a big building that people walked by all day, every day, and have no idea what's going on behind these closed doors. All the women were probably 16 to 60, all with Traffickers. And then there's a shower and a locker room where the men change, and then you go back around, there's a whole corridor of rooms, probably 8 or 9 rooms with mattresses and a nightstand. And the men come in and they pay a door fee, they get buzzed into the lounge, and then they get to come and hand whoever they want a ticket. And then you go back and you exchange. There's a whole persona that you have to take on when you enter the commercial sex trade. First of all, your identity completely goes, right? So I have to change my name, and I have to be whoever I have to be for each sex buyer, because they all come in wanting a different experience and a different story. And so it's really like being in a cult, right? You have to deprogram your mind. It's complete emotional, mental, it's like mind control, essentially. But you're never really prepared. I remember the details like they were yesterday. Unfortunately, this type of trauma like just probably stays in your brain. He could have been my grandfather. You know, I remember his name, what he looks like, his shirt. And I was so horrified and disgusted, I had to unplug. I had to disassociate in order to survive. And right when it was done, he hands me the money, and I just remember looking at that, feeling excited. Like, ooh, okay, look how much money I just made really fast, right? And so you do this over and over again all day. And I was there from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. on purpose. And I had to stay a few days in a row. So these long hours, day after day, on purpose, because you have to realize my trafficker was trying to break me down, right? Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, as much as possible. So he didn't use the violence right away. That would come later when I start to change my mind. So right after these few days, we come back home to Boston, we get out of the car, it's like 5, 6 in the morning. I'm disgusted, I'm ashamed, I'm tired, it's daylight, and we get out of the car and have a pocket full of money. And we get out and he puts out his hand. And I knew that gesture meant to hand over the money, but logically I thought, why would I give you the money? You weren't there. I thought you were my boyfriend. Wait, you're my pimp. I wasn't on the street. I don't need protection. You know, it's okay. I'm in this place. And he just says, is there gonna be a problem? And I say, no, and I hand it over. So at that moment, that's considered breaking, right? They wanna break you down as much as they can.
Sex trafficking is a crime of violence under both state and federal law. There are 3 key elements to the crime of trafficking, and what that means is if someone is accused of trafficking, there was an investigation or there's going to be an investigation into their activity, and ultimately a prosecutor has to go to court, and the only way a prosecutor wins a case is if they prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. So there has to be elements of the crime that the fact finder hears. So the three elements of trafficking, and I'll talk about the federal law because every state is subject to the federal law. There needs to be an act perpetrated by the means of force, fraud, or coercion for the purposes of a commercial sex act. So I'm going to talk backwards. What is a commercial sex act? It's anything of value in exchange for a sex act. It could be food, it could be clothing, it could be shelter, it could be safety, it could be drugs. Anything of value. It's not just money. So what are the acts? You only need one act. Recruiting, enticing, harboring, maintaining, patronizing, solicits, advertising. I might be missing one. But yes, transporting is one of those acts, but it's not necessary. I think people get confused and think, oh, drug trafficking, moving drugs from one place to another. I could traffic one person in one hotel room and never take them anywhere.
I go back home to my family's house. I go back to college. I go back to working at the salon. And every few days I disappear and get sent to Connecticut. But I was 19, right? And my parents didn't ask questions. I kind of raised myself anyway, so no one was really paying attention to things. I was living this double life. And so that would go on for 5 years. He moved me to another massage parlor up in Kittery, Maine. That was a bit more high class. I was even trafficked through the legal brothel system in Nevada, where prostitution is legal in certain places. He sent me there to be exploited. Down to Florida, anywhere that he could make money, he would send me for short bits of time. And when you're walking into someone's home or hotel room and the door shuts, violent and crazy things can happen because no one's watching. So I've definitely had my share of inappropriate, horrific things happen in those situations.
I was 18 when I was first approached, and it was by my boss at a department store. And I thought I was just going to be having dinner with this older gentleman. Like, it wasn't really explained to me. I was very naive. I had a very troubled childhood, to say the least. I was in foster homes. I was in DCF, or whatever you call it, in whatever state, group homes. And then I aged out, and my manager right away knew that I had vulnerabilities. She saw it. It was a female. And she saw it. She knew I had substance use disorder. She used that to her advantage to get me into the life. She used to give me drugs to stay up late with her and do the displays at the department store. So we dressed all the walls up and stuff. It was actually quite fun at the beginning. And I just thought she really liked me. She had an interest in me. She knew I was living with my grandfather. My grandfather was dying of esophageal cancer. I moved in with him right when I was 18 to take care of him, because that's when I aged out of the system. He passed away 6 months later. She knew I didn't have great family support, and she spinned it like Pretty Women, right? That's what I imagined in my head. This was 2004. People had a lot of money. People were throwing monies around. OxyContin was really big at that time as well, right? And it just all spiraled out of control.
But unfortunately, our culture and society glamorizes that also, right? And you think about the movies and the media, and today the social media, and the ideas of that lifestyle being glamorized. Even when I was a kid, the movies that were popular, I remember watching Pretty Woman when I was a kid, and Julia Roberts was beautiful, and it looked like it was women's empowerment, and she was making this choice. And I'll tell you, my 8 years in the commercial sex trade, Richard Gere never showed up in a Lamborghini and put a string of pearls around my neck, right? But that's the way that the media portrays. And so we get these ideas of the commercial sex trade and drug dealing from these different streams of influence.
And then once that driver showed up that first night and I did that, I just kind of felt trapped. I felt like, how am I ever going to explain this? How am I ever going to talk to anybody about this? And it just continued the cycle. The revolving door in those hotels, I literally lived in hotels for 10 years of my life, besides the 2 years I had my son, And it's just wow,
that was a lot, you know. That's a lot. That's a lot on your body, your mind, your soul, you know. It sucks the soul out of you. Every time you do a date, it's like selling a little piece of your soul.
My trauma started in childhood. I had been sexually abused as a child. There was a lot of substance use, mental health that was undiagnosed, and family members. There was a lot of just trauma history that wasn't being addressed. We weren't talking about the issues. There wasn't counseling. It was just, if it's not happening anymore, you're fine. It's all done. So there was a lot of that I was dealing with. I remember my first suicidal thought being when I was 5 years old. My first suicide attempt was at 10. I was hospitalized when I was 12 for 3.5 months. I had been pressured into having sex at a very young age and didn't know that I could say no, or even what sex was, because we weren't talking about it. So that all led me into teen pregnancy. I became pregnant when I was 14 and started living in my own apartment at 14. And then I was talking to a friend at a restaurant in the town that I lived in, and we were just talking about how difficult life is and how hard it was to stay in school and gain enough money so that we could pay our bills. And there were two men listening to our conversation, and they came over to our table and they said, "Hey, we have something you might be interested in." So she was sitting over here to my right, and we just shrugged and said, "Sure, why not?" So they said, "Go to this brown apartment building, go up to the 3rd floor the next day, and we'll tell you all about it." So when we got up there, they looked at both of us and they said, "Well, show us what you can do." And we didn't know what that meant. So they laughed at us and called us stupid, which is something that has stuck with me throughout my life, just believing that I'm stupid. And then they said, "Take your clothes off." So we knew in that moment, like, uh-oh, like something really bad is about to happen, and it did. They raped both of us, and when they were done, they had us put our clothes back on, and they gave me a pager, and they said, "When this pager goes off, you better show up where and when we tell you to, or we're gonna have your son taken away from you." So they had listened to my conversation at the restaurant and knew that that was my biggest fear. So for 1.5 years, I was trafficked. I showed up where and when they told me to. I never knew what to expect. I didn't know where we were going, what was going to be expected of us, if we were going to come back. I never knew any of that. What I learned over that time was that we were going to be brought to hotels, be brought to bachelor parties at people's homes. We would be brought to strip clubs, we would be brought to truck stops. Those were the places that I was brought. I was never out on the streets, so I wasn't visible to people really in our community except for people who engaged in buying sex.
My childhood was excellent. I work with a lot of kids from a lot of different backgrounds, so I see lots of different stuff. But for me, I was a kid that I didn't have any risk factors. College was starting and you're supposed to be figuring out where your life is going to go. And sort of like the weight of expectation made me just want to run from it. So I found this toxic person in this toxic relationship, and all of a sudden I was around people that expected nothing of me because they weren't worried about going to college and getting good grades and having a job. They were worried about getting high. And a member of his family came to me and said, "Here, take this. It'll make you feel better." So it just spiraled from there. I mean, addiction only gets worse and worse and worse until you get to a place where you're really ready and really need the help. I was in treatment and in sober living and met my trafficker while I was there. There was a few times that I got beaten fairly badly. I think one time he hit me with either a metal pipe or the metal thing from the bathroom, like the towel hanger in the hotel bathroom, and it split my face open. So I had this big gash in my face. I probably had some facial fractures. I don't really know. I actually, at that time, was the only time that I ever reached out to somebody for help. I had this gash on my face that wound up getting infected, and I go to this hospital and I go in and, they're checking out my face and they ask the typical questions, and one of the questions is, do you feel safe at home? And on some impulse and some reaction to this situation, I said no. I said, one, I don't really have a home to go to, and I'm definitely not safe. And they were dealing with the issue on my face, and at some point I asked them how long I could stay at the hospital, because I didn't have anywhere safe to go. I didn't have anywhere to be. And one of the healthcare workers that was addressing the situation told me, this is a hospital, not a homeless shelter. You need to leave as soon as we're done. So they finished treating my face, and I almost felt like escorted me out. Like they thought I was just gonna try to hang around, and that's how they viewed me, as this homeless bum who wanted a bed to sleep in, or wanted to be warm, or wanted a meal from them. And they gave me none of that, and they didn't give me a cab voucher or anything to get back to where I needed to go. So I was stuck miles away from where I needed to be very shortly, and had to figure out a way to get home. And just the result of that has always lingered with me and makes me super passionate about education and training, because had they reacted differently, I actually would have avoided a really, really awful sexual assault that happened on my way home. I had to take a ride from somebody to get back to my city, and that person, I actually don't remember a lot of what happened, but I woke up in the back of a Rite Aid, behind the store, not in the parking lot, and was left there about a mile from the hospital where they had picked me up.
One young woman said her exploiter would always punch her in the back of the head because he didn't want to bruise her face. And and so there's some brain injury, right, that has now caused some mental health for this young woman. And it is violent.
Folks who trade sex are the #1 target for serial killers. Folks who are trading sex in the United States are extraordinarily high risk of STIs, of experiencing physical violence, of traumatic brain injury. Women in the sex trade are twice as likely to die at a young age as women outside of the sex trade when you compare on age and health. The sex trade itself is a form of violence.
The risks that are involved for women in prostitution is PTSD levels that are comparable to war veterans, torture victims. They are raped on a regular basis. You can't separate prostitution and sex trafficking. Sex trafficking just describes one way into the sex trade.
Death is coming at you from all sides when you're in the sex trade.
I was completely suicidal, hopeless. I had no idea how I was going to put my life together.
You know what I mean? I just felt so dirty, gross, so much shame. When you wake up from that haze and you realize what's been going on for the last, 10 years of your life.
So ironically enough, the guy who took my brokenness and completely shredded it apart was the only person that I thought could put me back together. He had tethered my soul. Through the love bombing, through the grooming, I was addicted to the high of how he would make me feel when I had zero self-esteem, and giving that boost. And then the complete lows, the complete crushing of that through the abuse, through the sex acts, through the electrocution, whatever it might have been. And then back up to the high. And it was just this cycle over and over and over again of just everything was about him. My whole life was figuring out, how do I make this guy happy? I tried to leave 4 times, but kept going back. Either because I ran out of money, I needed food to eat, I needed my car fixed, I needed something here, or because he had isolated me so much that I was ashamed to go to anyone that I had known. I didn't know how to make new friends. And so I would go back because I felt so alone.
I had no means, I had no money. I typically didn't have a working cell phone. I was a long distance away from any family or friends. And the reality is that when you reach out for help, it's not there.
I left with my cat and my dog, got into one of the cars that was in my name anyway, and I drove away to my big empty apartment. And a few weeks go by and I panic and I call him back because of trauma bonds, right? Victims don't know how to do life without their abuser because that's what happens after all these years of trauma.
So the pimps don't want you to leave. They can sell you over and over and over again, but they can only sell one bag of dope, one gun, one bullet, right?
There were teachers, there were priests, there were law enforcement of all sorts.
How did I get out? I was arrested. Yep.